Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Can you hear all me? You can hear me all right? Walaikum assalam. We have 2 minutes yet to go for the live session. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. I welcome you all in this live session, which is actually organized by our Ilm Institute, IIU Ilm Institute. So this live session is basically to see questions regarding Islamic banking and finance, or we can broadly say Islamic economics. And myself, Dr. Nissar Yatoo, and I'm presently as a faculty member at Islamic Online University, and I'm heading the Department of Islamic Banking and Finance over there. So let me introduce our university first. So this Islamic Online University is actually running for last 10 years, and we have different departments, and one of the most important department, and which is running for last 10 years. So that is Islamic studies. In addition to that, the department, we have some departments which we have launched very recently, which include Islamic bank and finance. We have psychology, we have information technology, we have education, and we have Department of English, and we are running on. We are actually working on other departments to launch. So this Ilm Institute is our separate portal, which is actually for the short courses on different aspects, and we have different resource persons available on there. And this short course of Islamic banking and finance, is available on the Ilm website, and you can check the website and go through different courses on that. And this Islamic banking and finance course, which is available on the Ilm website, is actually comprised of six what we say courses, or six subjects we say, and which revolve around different aspects of Islamic banking and finance, which include Islamic insurance, Islamic microfinance, the basics of Islamic banking and finance. We have accounting for Islamic financial institutions. So this session is actually to seek questions regarding our courses we have at online university, plus some general questions regarding Islamic banking and finance. As you have gone through this, what we see our announcement of this session, we actually have circulated a Google form to seek questions. And some questions have come in advance to me, and some may be coming right now live. So I'm again, I again thank all who are participating in this session, and let me throw a little light on what Islamic banking and finance is. So actually, as you know, Islamic banking and finance is one among the alternative sectors in the financial sector around the world. So in the financial world around this financial sector, right? So we have it is named as Islamic banking somewhere, somewhere it is named as Islamic finance, somewhere it is Sharia finance, alternative finance, or interest free finance. So whatever the name is around the world, and so actually there are some common principles of Islamic banking and finance, which is the most important principle around which all these uh, uh, so all these operations of banking, Islamic banks and financial institutions are. So that is the principle of prohibition of interest, so or interest-free finance we call it. And second is principle of profit and loss sharing. And third principle is principle of what do we say, ethical use of funds and lawful business, right? So these are some main principles. In addition to this, there is principle of free from uncertainties and risks that we call as garar in Islamic terminology. So this is actually the brief about Islamic finance, and based on these principles, we have different institutions around the world you can see, and there are different models of Islamic finance. There are some banks which are full-fledged Islamic banks, and some banks are conventional banks, and they have windows of Islamic finance. And based on the principles, based on the basic principles of Islamic finance, which are derived from the Quran and Sunnah. So they have actually designed certain products, and the common products which we have around the world are musharak, the product services like musharaka, mudarabba, murabba, salam, etc. Right. So these are the terminologies, and some institutions may be launching these with the new names, right? But the underlying principles behind each and every product is same, right? So with regard to this different doubts among the public regarding various operations of Islamic banking and finance, actually we have launched a question. We have launched this link, and we invited questions from uh, our audience, right? And we got some questions which we have noted down, and when we see the questions which I got from the different people around who have seen our link for this event, and these I have summarized those questions in like. The one question was regarding this refusing to pay tax or paying tax out of interest, right? So in certain countries, so people believe in this concept, and receiving financial aids and scholarships. So what is its status as per the Islamic teachings? And permission of lease and hire purchase, right, in Islam, and extent of using bank transactions, means to what extent a Muslim can go in bank transactions, and what is the status of doing bank job in a commercial this in a conventional bank, right? And then how we can compare the riba which is mentioned in Quran, and how we can compare it with the present time interest which is prevailing around the banking sector around the world, right? Then what is the status of home financing and car financing in Islamic banking, and what is the method of paying zakah for a business, and what is the status of insurance in Islam. So and few questions were like, does this profit rate of banks play any role for murabbah being halal or haram, right? So this was a question. And use of Islamic banking with being poor credentials. So the person who is having the poor credentials, will he or she have chances of any use of Islamic banking and finance services? And murabbat transactions, procedure and steps. some brothers and sisters have asked to explain about this and trends of Islamic banking and finance for someone studying it. So whoever chooses this as a field to study for higher education. So what is actually the question here means, what is the prospects in the Islamic banking and finance? So these are some main questions which I have received right from the audience. And so if we'll take these questions one by one. So first I will take these questions one by one, then I will take the questions live from the audience, right? So please stop making questions till I will explain. I will discuss about the questions which I have listed, and then I will take the questions one by one from the audience who are live. Brothers and sisters, please bear with me. So first, I will throw light on the questions which we have received in advance from the audience, right? So when we see some common questions. So first question I mentioned it here is refusing to pay tax or paying tax out of interest. So this question is actually asked by some brother or sister from Bangladesh, and he has asked about that tax is not whenever we pay tax in particular economy, so it is not actually imposable as per the Sharia. So in Sharia we have the zakat only, and he or she is not actually considering to pay the tax imposed by the respective government, right? So actually, when we see this, when we see zakat is an obligatory in Islam, and it is one of the pillars of Islam. In addition to this, it is the discretion of a particular government, right? Discretion of a particular country who are governing a particular country. So actually, we have different kinds of economic needs in a country. Like we have to give basic infrastructure like health, we have to give education, we have to give roads, we have to give other conveniences, right? So for that, they need some money, and they have to actually get it from the public somehow. So there are different tax systems around the world, right? So in a normal scenario, whether it is a Muslim country, whether it's a non-Muslim country, right? Every citizen must pay the tax as per the tax laws. But when there are some special cases, there could be, like when your tax is, for example, used against you, right? In certain countries around the world, this may be the case. And when this tax, which is collected by the government, and this is wasted here and there in different luxuries by the concerned the authorities, right? So in that case, you can. But in normal circumstances, actually, we do not have to see about how this tax is treated in Islam, right? So there is not any prohibition of paying tax as per the Islam, and there is not any prohibition of collecting tax from the public whenever there is need. The genuine need is there, because we have to run the economies, we have to run the countries, right? So there are security needs, there are infrastructure needs. So for that, we have to collect tax, right? So there is not any point to refuse the tax on the Islamic ground, right? So this is not as per the Islam. And then a second question is receiving the financial aid and scholarship from different institutions in an economy. So this comes actually under, this is actually related to the first question. So when we collect the tax as a government, so we will be able to pay financial aid and scholarship to the students, right? Out of this, so this can be the provision, right? So when we see this receiving financial aid and scholarship, so there is not any harm in receiving financial aid and scholarships. So far, these financial aids and scholarships are not against the Islamic basic teachings of Islam, right? So this is the second question. And third is permission of lease and hire purchase. So on lease and hire purchase, we have certain actually this services in Islamic finance, what we called as ijara, or lease and hire purchase. So there is not any actually prohibition of these kinds of contracts, because on lease we get something on a rent, and we pay rent for using some property, right? So there is not any prohibition. And hire purchase is a similar kind of lease when we extend it with the condition that at the end the person who is who is using the particular property, or he or she will adopt that property and she will purchase at the end, right? So this is so there is not any ruling against hire purchase in Islam. Then we have the fourth question is extent of using banking transactions. So far those transactions which are actually all the transactions in banks are not prohibited. Some transactions are permitted, like remittance of money, right? So you have some banking services, you have to make bank drafts, you have to make for example, you have to remit money to somewhere, or you are keeping your money for the safekeeping, right? So these transactions, so there is not any what we say, any limit. But the transactions which are prohibited, like but it is obligatory for you to have an account, right? Otherwise you will not pay, actually you cannot sustain in any kind of economy, right? It will be the requirement of a particular government, right? So for that, in those circumstances, you have to use till your needs are fulfilled. So you do not have to rely on the banking transactions to make yourself rich, or to get advance, to get for example, those transactions which actually you do not need, right? So you have to fulfill those needs, without which you cannot survive, right? To that extent you can go for the banking transactions. Then bank job and employment schemes offered by banks. So actually this is a hot debate around the world among the different scholars, and I have heard scholars and fuqahas around the world, they are suggesting the people who asked questions on this to concern their respective ulamas on their respective land, right? So for example, in some countries the situations will be like that, without doing bank job, so it will be survive for a person, it will be difficult for a person to survive, right? So in that circumstances the fatwa will be different, and in some circumstances where, for example, other jobs are easily available, right, the fatwa will be different, right? So we're not actually authority to give fatwa over here, right? So you can consult your local ulamas, or in our respective countries, to discuss this to discuss this point. So regarding the bank job and employment schemes offered by the banks. And one question which is riba, and riba in actually what was mentioned in Quran, and the present day interest will is it same, right? So all forms of interest, scholars say that all forms of interest are not actually the riba. But the majority of scholars is the agreement that the interest which is prevailing in the present banking sector, in the present banking scenario around the world, are same as riba. So riba, as English, this translation is interest or usury, right? Because when we call up the compound interest is actually prevailing in the banks, and compound interest is in practice it's same like the riba, right? So this is again the debatable issue, and the scholars have different opinions on the concept of riba and interest. So the home finance and car finance in Sharia. So we have actually in Islamic banks, if you see around the world, there are different forms of financing homes or cars, and which we called as actually the murabba contracts. And so it is actually the sale agreement. Murabba is sale agreement, but murabba and deferred payments, it becomes the car financing or home financing or some other financing services, right? There is so if murabba is performed as per the Islamic principles, and we are not violating any Islamic principle in making the financing of cars and of homes, right? So there is not any wrong in financing our needs through the Islamic alternatives like murabba financing. So the question regarding the zakah for the business. So brother has mentioned that sometimes in the business there are profits, and sometimes in the business there are losses, right? But my point here, actually my point here is that when we see the paying up zakah, whether it is individual, whether it is for business, so it is same for individual, it is same for business. So you have to calculate the total merchandise in the business, right? So if it exceeds the nisab, right, then you have to pay the zakah at the 2.5% rate, right? So when it exceeds some the nisab, which is the actually the minimum, whether you are making it in terms of gold or whether you are making it in terms of silver, right? So whatever will be prevailing in your respective lands, so you have to see as per that, then you can pay the zakah as you are paying as individual, right? So if you see, murabba is a common this kind of contract, common kind of financing cars and houses in Islamic finance. And some brother or sister has asked the question whether the profit rate of the bank on murabba play any role of being murabba halal or haram, right? So actually, what I this realized from this question is the questioner actually the person who has raised this question, actually he or she wants to ask what profit margin we should fix, right? When we see what profit margin we should fix, so there is not actually any binding on the profit margin unless you are not exploiting someone, right? So some may say that 5% is as per Islamic rule, 10% is Islamic. So there is not any percentage of profit. So it depends upon the kind of business you are doing. So there is not any bar on the profit margins. And sometimes even if you are charging 50%, 100% profits, so that will not exploit a person, customer, your customer. But sometimes charging 10% profit will exploit your customer, right? So so we have to just take care of the things that we are not exploiting our customers by charging more prices, right? So that we have to uh, consider, right? So this is actually this role of profit in the murabba contract. And when we see the use of Islamic banking with poor credentials, right? So when we see Islamic banking, so this doesn't mean that it is all for charity. So Islamic banks are there to do business. They have to extend finances to people, whether it is on the principle of profit and loss share. So they have to assess risks uh, a person is having, right? So the poor credentials here mean that the person is not qualifying as per the requirements of the bank, right? So actually it comes under the corporate social responsibility of a bank. It is not actually from the main business of a bank, right? So person who's in poor credentials will he or she qualify for the finance from Islamic bank. So it depends upon the policy of bank, it depends upon the economy under which the bank is operating, it depends upon the regulators of that particular bank, and it depends upon how much role the bank has in corporate social responsibility. So this is not actually when we see that there is an Islamic bank and everyone must get finance from that. So it is not actually the requirement for an Islamic bank. So Islamic bank has a requirement to do its business as per the Sharia, right? Then the second thing is for the social responsibility in which they can extend some Qardul Hasana, right? For those persons who are actually in need. So this is the second aspect, and it is the policy of a particular bank, how it so to what extent they can go for this Qardul Hasana, they can extend the Qardul Hasana to the people, right? Then uh, last question is Murabba transactions procedure and steps, right? So this actually Murabba transaction is simply goes bank goes to the market and purchase a particular product, whatever is needed by the customer. So normally it is a house or it is car, right? And they charge some profit margin on it and sell it the customer on the deferred payments, right? So this is the simple procedure for the murabba, and there will be some other forms of murabba. So this is simple procedure as the person has asked in the question, the procedure and steps in the murabba financing. So with this uh, I have answered the questions which the brothers and sisters have raised earlier. And now I will read the questions which are on my screen. And so, first question is uh, raised by brother Humble Adam. What is Islamic banking? So I hope this I have answered this question in very beginning by giving the brief about the introduction of Islamic banking and finance. So, second question is from brother Siddiq Abdul Wahab. The credit card, the use of credit card is allowed as per Islam or not, right? So when we see the credit card from the normal banks, actually we are uh, signing it actually with the terms of interest. Means when we are taking credit card and we are utilizing the service of credit card, and when we go to the market with the credit card, our agreement with the bank is that if we fail to pay the amount which the bank has paid through credit card within a stipulated time period, so they will charge the interest. Means we are signing the agreement for the interest, right? So it is actually in normal circumstances, whenever when you don't have any dire need of it, so you should avoid. But scholars give some relaxation in it, means that if you are sure that you will not get late in the payment, and so in that circumstances you can use it. But the better is to take away from the credit card, so it is not actually, so when it is not actually needed and you are using it, so better is to take away from the credit cards, right? So but so there are some benefits the banks are offering on the credit cards, so this is the sacrifice for avoiding the credit card, right? So this question was same by Raif Hussein, right? Then again, it was asked by Dr. Noob, and then question is from uh, M- Majid Arif. What is the value of BSc Islamic Finance? Right. So actually, we value a particular degree or a qualification in two ways. One is what knowledge you will get from a particular degree. So when we see the knowledge of in BSc Islamic Finance, so you will get actually the basics of how the Islamic economies should operate, and what are the rulings of Islam on the different aspects of banking and finance. And second is when we see the value in terms of career, right? So you may get the career as consultants in Islamic banking and finance. You may open your some, for example, some small institutions, or you may join some large organizations which are based on Islamic banking and finance. And in academics as well, it is treated as one of the branches of finances, or branches of banking and economics, right? So which is taught in different institutions in parallel with the conventional financial subjects, right? So Dr. Noob has the last question here, like uh, he has ordered some item, each cost rupees 5, then sells it on 10. So does this include the riba? So this is not actually riba, this is the profit you are charging, right? So I mentioned it earlier that while making a sale transaction on profit, you are making the markup on a particular product or services you are offering. So you have to take care that you are not exploiting someone with your price. You don't have monopoly in the market, right? So in case of perfect competition, whether there are different sellers, so you have right to choose any price. But sometimes some things are essential commodities and products, like medicines we have, or some products which is not available with other sellers and dealers in the market, right? So in that particular scenario, you have to take care of this the price you are charging is actually reasonable, and there is not any what do we say, exploitation to the customers, right? So these were the different questions which were posed by the attendants on my screen. So if there are any questions, any more questions, you can you can ask me right now. So in order to get more knowledge about the different practices of Islamic banking and finance, how it is working around the world, and what are the different uh, products and services, right? So I invite you to get enrolled in the course which we have on the Ilm Institute if you want to do it short run, and if you want to do it in the long run and you want to choose to study to take it as a field of higher education, right? Then you can go through our different courses in Islamic finance at main campus Islamic Online University, so which is completely online, and we have three uh, types of degrees over there. One is the certificate course, which is for 1 year, and if you are completing the 2 semesters, you will get a certificate course, and if you are completing 2 more semesters, you will get the associate degree, and if you are completing 8 semesters, means 4 years, you will get the BSc Islamic Banking and Finance. Then in addition to this, actually, we are working on launching of the master's degree in Islamic finance. So we'll be announcing about this that as well. So if you have any questions, any more questions, and I hope I have answered all the questions. Actually, there is not clear-cut answer to the questions. Most of the questions which you have asked about the riba credit cards. So there is not the clear-cut question, a clear-cut answer, right? If people order item that isn't even there yet, and then when the item comes, it is damaged, and the person who is in charge didn't take responsibility for it. So actually, you are this is actually a kind of salam contract, or we say istisna, right? The advance when we make order in advance. So in that particular, you have to make specification. So specification is there, and it is the responsibility of the dealer who is taking your order and selling that particular product to you. And if it is damaged, it is the responsibility of the dealer till the product is comes to you, right? So you have to check the product when it comes, right? So this is the way actually. So it is actually it is not having this has not anything to do with the Islamic finance. So it is actually the ethics in the business, right? So it is ethics that when you order something, and the person who is making the order is responsible for that particular thing, right? Any more questions? Right, inshallah, I will be keeping this. I will keep forwarding those videos on this, right, on our YouTube channel, inshallah. Yes, actually, some products which you do not know. So we have different types of products available online. Some products are with specification. For example, you are ordering a particular kind of a mobile phone, you are ordering a particular kind of computer, or you are ordering a particular kind of accessories, right? And what you know that this is actually from this company and this quality, this brand, and this brand, for example. So in that particular circumstances, you can go with the online. And sometimes you will come across those products which you are not aware about what actually it is. So it is actually better to get that product without having knowledge of the product, right? So this is a garar. Even it is not even in the online products only. So it is in the as in offline shopping as well. So if you are not knowing about certain kinds of products, right? So what it is actually, and who is branding this product, and who is actually launching this product in the market, right? So who is responsible for having any this, for example, damages, or for having any what we see problems later on, right? So in those circumstances, you should avoid using those products and buying those products. So this is a gutter, right? Any more questions? Please let me know if I have missed to answer any question. No more questions? Okay, so this Bitcoin actually, so it is the virtual currency. Actually, there are certain problems which have been realized by the different scholars on it. One problem is the regulatory authority behind it, who is issuing, like, if we see a currency of a particular country, it is issued by some particular bank who is taking the responsibility of it. But when we see the Bitcoin, it is not, there is not any regulatory body behind it. Second, it is when there is not any regulatory bodies behind it, so there are chances of corruption, right? And nobody is responsible for this. So this actually, scholars say it is a kind of gambling to engage in Bitcoin, right? So this is the scholars' point over here. It is not Bitcoin only; the all forms of virtual currency like this. Okay, so when we see takaful is actually the alternative to the insurance, whether it is this general insurance, or uh, general insurance, or what we say life insurance. So when we see insurance, there are certain kinds of so there are certain aspects which have been realized by different scholars, like where the aspect of, for example, it is a kind of transferring risk, right? So when you are actually you are selling your risk, and companies buying the risk, right? So this is the point over here. So without having any calculation on the risk, so it is not permissible. Second point is, in case of this life insurance, and other policies like the life insurance, in which we have two options. One is risk cover plus investment option. So risk cover is actually, so for risk there is the stand of scholars that there should be pooling of risks, and it should be actually dealt with the mutual brotherhood. So there should not be any earning on this buying and selling of risks, right? So it should be mutual brotherhood. For example, if in a particular community there is a particular kind of risk, and in a particular community 100 individuals and parties are there, and there is risk of uh, there is one person is having a particular risk, right? Means so there is probability that one person will face certain problem. In that kind of, so we should have some mutual kind of things, like, so whoever will face some problem and others will reimburse, right? So this is actually the concept of mutual brotherhood. But when we see this risk, somebody will come and he will buy it himself, and the person is selling that risk with the premium, right? So this is actually against the Islamic rulings. Second thing I discussed is I mentioned here is the investment part. Means at when we see in common kinds of insurance, whenever we pay this premium for certain years, the agreement is that the sum assured will be paid at the time of event is happening, for example, death, or at the time of or at the end of 20 years, 30 years, or 15 years. So whatever is the term for that insurance. So this is actually it is the kind of riba is involved in this. So this is second aspect, and third aspect is that in which sector those insurance companies are investing those that amount, right? So they may be investing in those businesses which are unethical or un-Islamic, like it may be they may be investing it in the companies which are involved in alcohol, pork, etc. Right. So this is the regarding this takaful, right? And takaful is actually alternative to those problems which we have in the conventional insurance, right? So affiliate marketing. So can you, Brother Riaz, can you explain about more about it? What is affiliate marketing? What you mean here? What is affiliate marketing? As I'm from this finance background, so I'm not aware much about the marketing. So can you explain me more about what is affiliate marketing? So I actually regarding the investment part of this conventional insurance company. So if even if they are investing in the halal activities, but I have mentioned three aspects. I have mentioned the three aspects, right? So all the three aspects which I have mentioned should be fulfilled by the insurance, right? So it is not actually you are investing in halal business like making of, for example, um, telecommunication, or you are investing in electronics or garments, right? So this is a halal kind of business, but that investment is generated. So that investment is financed by, for example, interest-based agreements, right? So actually, so this is one of the requirement. It should be in this halal. This investment should be halal, right? So Amazon online selling actually. So actually, when we see this Amazon online selling, actually Amazon is a platform they're providing to the dealers to market their products, right? So there is not any actually uh, anything evident which is wrong, right? As per my wallahu alam, as per my knowledge. Any more questions? No more questions. So at the end, I would like to thank all for joining this event, question and answer sessions, and I would be happy to be in touch with you individually if you would like to be in touch with me. So I'm typing my WhatsApp number here, right? So you can ask for some further questions. So I will reply as per my according to my knowledge, right? So actually, as I have requested earlier that these uh, actually the questions which were raised in this session, so there is not any clear cut answer to these questions, right? So actually answers depend on the individual who is asking the question, and the different an individual for the same question, different individuals may get different answers, right? So this was actually the general notion about the Islamic finance which is around the world, right? This is my WhatsApp number. You can contact me anytime on this. Right. So with this, I would like to end this session. Barakallahu fikum, jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So in actually, the real start business is where you do not use your money. So sometimes you may act as agent in selling a particular product, right? So this is actually, so you become agent or vakil of some dealer who is actually owning the product, right? So actually, one thing you have to take care that either you are owning the product you are selling or you have authority to sell that product, right? So if you are fulfilling the requirement either of the way, the ownership of the product, but either by yourself or you have authority to sell it, and owner is someone else. So in that particular case, there is not an issue. The only thing you have to ensure that there is a real ownership. Someone is owning the asset and he's selling, and you are agent of that particular seller, right? Whether Riyaz Hussain, it is clear. Okay, right. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.